All right. Testing one, two. All right. Sounds good. We're ready to go. All right. So, welcome to Cool Beans Hot Stuff. Today is Film Buff Fridays. And on my channel on Film Buff Fridays, we go over film stuff, film related stuff. Usually like film reviews, movie reviews is what I'm shooting for at some point. But for now, we've actually just been covering some film theory type stuff every week. Every Friday, we kind of tackle a new aspect of film theory with the hopes of improving our media literacy game. So if that sounds like fun to you, then please stick around for the rest of this stream. It's about 2 hours. It should turn out to be around 2 hours. Today, we're going over a deep dive into film type, and I'll explain what that is. Um, I don't know who's watching live. I think my cutie pies. She's out of town, hanging out with her broski, so they're probably not on stream today. So it might just be me hanging out and talking to myself, which is perfectly fine. I'm cool with that. Always enjoy talking to myself. I'm a very good conversationalist. And if you do see this video on YouTube, please like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. And maybe considering heading over to Twitch and come checking out my live stream so you can come and enjoy my conversationalist skills. So, anyways, yeah. These last couple of days, I haven't been streaming because I actually fucked up my mic stand. I put up a whole bunch of new, what do we call this shit? Foam paneling, acoustic paneling for the room, kind of help with echoes, and in the process, I fucked up my mic stand, which it was like a cheapo $30 mic stand, little piece of shit thing that I bought, and I was like, oh, this will work fine. And as soon as I hit it and then went to fix it, I was like, man, I should have got a better mic stand. I hit it, and then well, the screw is stripped. Long story short, I don't need to go into the whole fucking thing. So instead, I bought this really nice, really, well, I don't know if it's expensive, but it was more expensive than my last mic stand, Shure mic stand. So Shure makes really good products. I used to work in recording studios, and Shure was always top of the line shit. So, anyways, and then I also listened back to my last two streams and realized I had popping and cracking all over those fucking cocksuckers, man. So I don't know what's that's about. So I'm back to, as you can see on my screen, monitoring my latency, which is perfectly fine. As for right now, conclusion, your system appears to be suitable for handling real-time audio and other tasks without dropouts. And I do not believe everything's looking good, but so yeah, I'm kind of monitoring my drivers and everything else, monitoring my latency while we're streaming. So if I look preoccupied, it's because I am. But in spite of all of that, right, new mic stands, didn't get a stream for 2 days because I didn't have a mic stand. So this is my first day back after a couple days. Missed Wildlife Wednesdays and Conspiracy Theory Thursdays, which I'm okay with because those are like steadily not turning into my favorite days. The doing the research for the conspiracy theory days is so fucking hard, man. I much prefer Fridays, so definitely made sure I wanted to be here for a Friday stream, even if it's just me chatting, because I love to talk about movies and I love to hear myself talk about movies. So that's what we're going to be doing today, talking about movies. We're going to be talking about film theory. We went over what film theory is. If you don't know what film theory is, I got a video on YouTube. You can go check that out. It's a pretty decent video. There is some crackle and pops in that fucking thing because I was just discovering what my issue was around that time. So, you'll have to forgive it. This weekend, I'm going to be spending all day tomorrow. I'm going to be spending. Already got tons of videos pulled up on how to fix all these drives and decrease my latency. So we'll see how it works. I mean, so far it's doing great, but eventually it'll go to shit. Um, and yeah, you'll end up getting a pop or two here. It's not horrible though. So if you're just tuning in, you want to learn about film theory and have good audio while you're doing it, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I just started last month streaming, shooting videos, the whole 9 yards. So I'm still going through my motions, my beginner growing pains, right? Um, but yeah, so go check out that video on film theory if you enjoy film theory related topics. And I got another video. I think. Do I? Don't I? Let me check here. Let me pull up my YouTube. I got other videos, lots of videos on my YouTube. I've got, I'm outputting like a video a day, so I got more videos than I can count on there now. A tour theory, another good video on a film theory. But that's specifically about a tour theory, obviously. And then I got another video called The 8 Elements of Film Theory. That's the one that I wanted to remember. The 8 Elements of Film Theory, which will give you a good rundown of what we're talking about today. Oh, I meant to mute that burp and kind of like just cut it in half. Well, whatever. So you heard half my burp. You'll get over it. Anyways, so I'll do a quick rundown of my intro to film theory video. Or 8 elements of film theory video, excuse me. So yeah, in film theory, there is 8 elements that film theorists look at. They're all right here in front of your screen: types of film, shots, angles, lighting, color, sound, editing, and mise en scène. I know that that's how you say that because I spent a whole fucking video making sure I could say that correctly. So those are your 8 elements of film theory that film theorists and critics look at when they're analyzing a movie through a lens of film theory. And we are going to go through and deep dive. I did that video, 8 Elements of Film Theory, which gives you a very rough introduction to each one of those elements. So you at least understand what's in them, have a rough idea. If somebody says, oh, yeah, the mise en scène in that movie, because people say that every day in your normal life, right? If anybody does say that, you know what they're talking about. But now we're going to do a deep dive into each one of these. And so is this the first Friday of the month? I think it is, isn't it? Oh, wow. First Friday of my second month. Is it the second Friday? Yeah, it's the second Friday of the month. What fucking day is it? I don't even know. May 9th. So it's the first, technically I don't know what the fuck it is. Technically it's the second Friday of the month. We're okay. So yeah, this Friday, we're going over deep dive into film type, which is the first element. And then I believe next week I gotta consult my handy dandy note cards. They keep me organized so I know what the fuck I'm doing. Yeah, next Friday we'll be doing a deep dive into shots, so you understand how to read shots, what different types of shots mean, and all of that. So let's dive into today, because I don't have a shit ton of information for you guys, but I got a lot of good information. We got a few videos here we're gonna watch, and I am looking at my latency. Hold on. Yeah, we got a couple videos to watch and some good information for understanding types of film. So by the time you're done with this video, you should have a really good understanding, or you'll have a good video to reference. So you really know what the fuck a different type of film is. You know what the 3 basic types of different types of film are, and how to analyze, how to pick out any movie that you watch, how to categorize it appropriately, right? So first, let's jump into what are the 3 types of film. So in film theory, there are 3 types of film: realism, formalism, and classical. Okay, and you can think of those on a spectrum. On the right here, we will say there is realism, which is kind of more or less what it sounds like. We'll explain that later. On the far left will be your formalism. You can think of that of right, realism, left, formalism, like, kind of fits. And then right in the middle is classical. Okay, so it's kind of like splitting the difference between the two, right? So realism, what is that? So realism concerns films that focus on showing reality as it is. It is the attempt to provide a more or less unfiltered view of the world through a camera. Some of the things you typically see in this film style are non-paid or non-professional actors, no visual effects, handheld cameras, minimal use of editing, and a use what's on location attitude in terms of lighting and props. So very minimal lighting and props. They stick to shooting most of their scenes on location. You see this typically in documentaries, but also in feature films. The best example is the Dogme 95 movement, created by Thomas Vinterberg and Lars von Trier. Oh, we run into this name quite frequently on this channel, Lars von Trier, at least on Fridays. As we dive into film theory, he seems to be he's kind of like a darling of the film industry. This dude can just make like full-blown pornos, and everybody thinks it's like the most amazing thing ever done. So they made these two, Lars von Trier and Thomas Vinterberg, made feature films that were influenced by the aspect of realism. Most films in the realism style look as rough and lifelike as possible. It helps the audience understand the intentions of the filmmaker. So realism, exactly what it sounds. It's as real nitty gritty as it can possibly be. There's a good over here. In addition to this really nice visual that we get about the elements of film theory, we go down past all this shit. I went through all of that other shit in a different stream. We go to realism. It gives us some basic characteristics, right? A good bullet point list of basic characteristics of realism movies. So non-professional actors, no special effects, on location sets and props, minimal editing, natural lighting, and documentary style. Okay. So that's your rough breakdown of realism. Okay. And then, so what's formalism? Again, remember, realism over here, formalism over meow. So complete and polar opposites, right? So if realism means real, nitty gritty, on set, natural lighting, nothing, as realistic, as close to real life as humanly possible, as realistic of a representation of real life as you can get, then what would formalism realistically? Well, it would be the opposite of realism. It would be, well, this right here. Formalism is essentially the exact opposite of realism. Oh, I just told you that. Copying my best moves. You can see it more as the surrealistic or abstract art of film styles. Some of the things that categorize formalism are professional actors, plenty of light and sound effects, heavy editing and manipulation with speed, and lots of visual effects. The filmmaker essentially uses every tool necessary to showcase that this is not reality. But that is not to say that it cannot relate to reality, people, or culture. Just because animated TV shows like BoJack Horseman and Rick and Morty aren't realistic, they can still contain philosophical questions or life lessons, right? I love Rick and Morty. BoJack Horseman's pretty good too. I haven't watched nearly as much as that, but yeah, I'm a huge fan of Rick and Morty. So, anyways, that's completely unrelated, I suppose. So yeah, formalism, exact opposite of realism. It is as far from realistic as it can get. It is a movie that is not trying to give you any kind of interpretation of reality or any kind of representation of reality. It is just giving you a movie for the sake of, well, not being reality, right? Kind of almost like escapism, right? So some characteristics of formalism, go back to our handy dandy little bullet point list. Professional actors, right? Always includes professional actors as opposed to realism, which includes non-professional actors. Realism includes no special effects. Formalism includes heavy reliance on special effects, right? So lots of special effects. Realism or formalism, excuse me, uses editing speeds up or slows down time in the movie. So they use editing to speed up or slow down the sensation of time. Whereas in realism, minimal editing altogether, very little editing for any reason. But specifically in formalism, you're doing a lot of editing for the speeding up and slowing down of time. And there's a reason that it's related to time. Once we get into classical, you'll see right here, editing used for time lapse. Okay, so that would be like, the good guy is leaving the bar to go home. In a realism movie, you would potentially see the good guy leave the bar, walk to his car, get in his car, turn on the radio, start it, then turn on the radio, because that's how that works. Drive down the road, stop at the stoplight, pick his nose, flick his booger out the window, hit this street, then that street, then the other street until he finally gets home and then walks into his house. That would be realism, because that's as realistic of a drive home as you get, right? Classical, which we'll hit a little bit more in depth here in a second. Classical would be editing for time lapse. So you would see the good guy leave the bar and walk towards his car, maybe. So we see, okay, he's going to go drive somewhere. And then the next shot is him getting home, shutting his living room door. So we can put two and two together as the audience and say, okay, he got in his car and he drove to his house. You don't need to see the driving to his house. Formalism would be editing for the sake of speeding up and slowing down time, right? Like maybe he's walking out of the bar. And as he's walking out of the bar, he drops his car keys. And as he drops his car keys, it's really dramatic. So we slow down the scene. So his keys are like slowly falling in his air. We go slow motion. He's like, no. And he's reaching for his keys. And that would be slowing down time in the movie, right? And then he grabs his keys and he's like, oh, okay. And then for whatever reason, they decide we're going to show the whole fucking drive over to his house, but we're going to do it super, super fast. So it's kind of cartoonish, right? So you see a really sped up version of him, play some like cartoon music in the background. It's like, beep, 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 and it's him hitting all the stop signs, going through the stoplights, and getting to his house, right? So that would be speeding up time, right? That would be formalism. Okay, and then we're back in formalism. Yeah, formalism also uses lighting and sound to create exaggerations. So heavy reliance on artificial lighting and sound effects to create the atmosphere, the tension, to let the audience know what is happening and add to the setting of the story, all different kinds of stuff, right? That includes, Godzilla's roar is a sound effect, not realistic, obviously. Compare that to realism, where you're using completely natural lighting, right? Very natural lighting, which essentially just means the room that you're in, that's the lighting you use. That's your natural lighting, right? And then lastly, formalism breaks the illusion of reality. That's the whole point of it, is to give you something that breaks the illusion of being realistic. Realism is more documentary style. Okay. We'll get into some different examples of each. I had a really fun time going through my entire movie library, which is like 700 movies now, and picking and choosing what I thought were some of the best examples of formalism, realism, and classical in each genre, right? So, anyways, let's get to classicalism after I drink my coffee. So, and look at my latency. Classical film style can be categorized as being in between formalism and realism. Again, like I said, realism over here on the right, formalism on the left, classical in the middle. So, an in between point in formalism and realism. Films in the classical style focus mainly on storytelling, using any tools necessary to advance this. Some things that categorize classical film are professional actors, minimal visual effects, lighting, and sound creating mood. Shot either at a studio or on location. So it can be in a studio or on location. And they use minimal use of visual effects, lighting, and sound effects solely for the purpose of creating mood while they're telling you the story. It's the goal of the classical filmmaker to make a story and make characters that you care about. They will use different film elements to do this, but they will not emphasize their cinematography, visual effects, or anything in that regard. Their focus is on their storytelling and relaying it to the audience. So they will still break the boundaries of realism. Again, if we look at classical right here, at that same little bullet point list, professional actors are okay, minimal or no special effects compared to realism, which is no special effects, hard and fast rule, and formalism, which relies heavily on special effects. It could have special effects, but it's relatively minimal on location and or in studio. Editing used for time lapse only, lighting and sound used to create a mood. So versus in formalism, lighting and sound creating exaggeration, right? Classical, I think a great way to look at it is realism is designed to give you the most realistic interpretation that it possibly can of real life. Formalism is meant to break the illusion of reality, create a very unrealistic setting. And classical is used to simply just tell a story. And when you have to break the realism to do that, you do. So most films, in my opinion, seem to fall under classical, right? The majority of them fall somewhere in the middle between formalism and realism. And then on the very outskirts of formalism and realism, you have a minority, more or less, of films, right? But it is a spectrum. I did notice. I will say, disclaimer, I even say it here right here is my list of film type examples. And I even have my disclaimer typed up right here so I don't forget it. This is from my library. Note that a lot of films fall somewhere in between the three types. It's not distinct realist, classical, formalism. So these are some of the more obvious films to illustrate the most extreme examples. And even then, like after making this list, I thought about it and I was like, there's some movies on here that could fall somewhere in the middle between classical and formalism. A lot of the movies, particularly in like the horror movie and sci-fi genre, fall somewhere in between formalism and classical. I had a cough. Got the black lung pop. Don't want to blow your eardrums out. So, yeah, that is the three main styles of, three main types of film. Okay, we got a pretty good rundown. We're going to keep up, we can get rid of this guy, and we're going to keep up this guy for these bullet points. Once I start running through each one, I'm going to give you examples of each from my own personal library, and hopefully you've seen some of them so you can kind of relate. And if not, then those will be good suggestions for you to maybe check out in your own spare time as sort of a practice for picking out these different kinds of films. Which is, ideally the whole point of me running through each of the elements of film theory is because the whole point of this, at least the point of this channel at the moment, at the point of my Fridays at the moment, is to help the viewer as I help myself get better at reviewing and critiquing movies, because that's ultimately what I wanted to do with my Fridays, was just critique. And, I even thought it would be really fucking fun to just sit and watch a movie live and critique it as I'm going, review it as I'm going, get a bowl of popcorn, and I pretty positive that I'll get the shit copyright strike out of me. But it's still technically, if I'm doing it for the purpose of, reviewing the movie with the audience for the audience's sake, then I'm pretty sure I can get away with a fair use thing there. I just heard it's a real pain in the ass to do it, but I'll fight for it. I'll fight for y'all. I'll figure it out some way. We'll give it a shot and see what happens anyways. At this point, I'm such a small content creator that I'm pretty sure I could get away with it and nobody would care. So it is what it is, But anyways, so yeah, that was the point of my Fridays, was to help you guys get better at reviewing your favorite movies while I get better at reviewing my favorite movies. So we're kind of doing it together. And then eventually when I'm done running through film theory, then I'm going to start practicing. But in the meantime, I am doing a lot of my own practicing now. Like after again, that was the whole point of writing up a list, a film type examples list, so I could kind of get some good practice in. And I suggest you do the same with your own filmography, right? If you're enjoying, if you two are also like, yeah, man, my fucking media literacy could improve. I'm a bit of a media literacy retard. That's totally cool. I am too, bro. So welcome to the club. This would be a good idea to pull up a Word document, pull up your film library, and make a list of your favorite films and try to categorize them into realism, classical, and formalism. And in the description of the YouTube video, I will actually have this webpage right here linked in the description, so you'll be able to click on it and pull this up on your phone, and then as you're categorizing your movies, you'll be able to pull this bullet list up. So that'll be helpful. So you're welcome. Okay, let's go into realism to get a little bit of a better understanding on realism, right? Because, I could probably end the stream right there and be good to go. Like, okay, everybody, that was a fun 23 minutes of streaming. Thank you for showing up. Now you understand this. Goodbye. But I threw some extra stuff in there for a little bit of extra practice to get some other people's opinions on it. Mr. Patrick H. Williams here. Oh, you can't see it here. Let's throw it over the YouTube screen. Okay, there. Mr. Patrick H. Wilhelms. Is that Wilhelms? Wilhelms over here. We're going to get his opinion on why do we care if movies are realistic? What is the point of making realism movies in the realism type, right? So let's see what Mr. Patrick has to say here. Already got the subtitles. Sweet. Okay, check it out.
About the color grading in Marvel Studios movies, which I criticized for being flat and dull when I think they would benefit from a more dynamic, vibrant look. This video sparked a lot of conversation, as in over 8,000 comments worth of conversation on YouTube alone. I've read most of these comments, and there's one argument that has come up more times than I can count. It's a variation on this. I like the flat look because it makes the movie feel more realistic. I can't connect emotionally to saturated colors and deep black values because it doesn't look like the real world. First off, let me just say that I don't believe this. I understand if you've never noticed a problem with the look of these movies, but to say you can't connect to movies with vibrant color palettes? Are you saying you couldn't connect to Wonder Woman, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, hell, even Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which had a far richer color palette than Marvel's other movies? Even if you don't like all of these movies, I'm pretty sure the color palette was not the issue. But what interests me more about this is the value people are placing on realism. Even in the
You know, I personally, the minute I have to talk, got a hair in my throat. Personally, I never found an issue with the color palettes on the Marvel movies. When we get into, let's see, what here, let's pop back over to my other screen real quick. Hold on. Let's pause Mr. Patrick here. When we pop over to keep going there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When we pop over to the fifth element of film theory, that is actually color and color palettes. We'll learn a little bit more about that. So I personally right now I'm not like focusing on color palettes of the movies. I'm kind of trying to. That was a big burp. I knew it was coming too. I'm not trying to review the color palettes of the movies that I'm watching at the moment, because I honestly don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to be reviewing when it comes to colors. I have no idea. So, it's an interesting idea that the Marvel movies, a lot of the Marvel superhero and Avenger movies have a dull color palette. I've never thought of that as such. And I've never had a problem with it either. I did, definitely notice Guardian of the Galaxy is definitely a lot more color in that movie, but I really liked it. Like, I mean, I thought they both worked really well. I think everybody's just being kind of a stinker here. Everybody who's like, no, they must have no color is a bit of a stinker. And then this Mr. Patrick here, as much as I appreciate his video, if you like his video, go to his channel and give him a like and a subscribe, by the way. But, he's being a little bit of a fucking, bedwetter too, when he was like, oh, there's not enough color. It's like, I don't know. I thought it was all good, man. Chill.
context of colorful pop superhero movies. So, let's talk about realism. To start, we've got to jump back to 1945. Andre Bazin, one of the most significant film theorists of the 20th century, argued that the goal of cinema was to represent the real world with the greatest commitment to realism. He advocated the use of wide shots, long takes with the camera at eye level, and limited editing, essentially to create the perspective of a person observing the events. So something like Jean Renoir's La Grande Illusion was his idea of the best use of the medium. He was very much not into, say, German Expressionism, which is dumb because that stuff rules. From a modern perspective, this idea of solely wanting cinema to recreate reality seems kind of short-sighted and dismissive of the vast potential of the medium. Another film theory.
Yeah, man, that seems fucking boring if you ask me. Like, I can see where the realism is important in certain films. Like I said, I got a list of my own films that are in my library that have some pretty heavy realism elements to them. And you can totally see how those films wouldn't work. We'll go over them after this dude's video and another article on it, just to get somebody else's perspective. But you can totally see how the realism is really important to some of these movies. To creating the atmosphere, right? It in itself can be a really useful tool for certain types of movies. But to go out there and say, yeah, you should have to make all movies as close to real life as possible is so fucking stupid. Like, nah, dude, there's so many awesome things awesome stories that you can make nowadays with the use of special effects and color palettes and all of that, Real bummer. This guy must have been real fun at parties.
Theorist of the time, Siegfried Kracauer, expanded on this discussion by drawing a distinction between two main tendencies of cinema: realism and formalism. These two tendencies were best represented by French filmmakers working in the earliest days of cinema. On the realism side, there were the Lumiere brothers, making films that were essentially static shots of real-life events. On the formalism side, there was Georges Méliès, telling highly stylized stories with elaborate sets, costumes, and special effects.
Okay, see, look at those two examples and fucking tell me which one is more entertaining, right? The one of just people piling out of, what was that, a fucking factory or whatever? Lumiere brothers.
There were the Lumiere brothers, making films that were essentially static shots of real-life events.
Static shots of real-life events. Like, that's fucking boring. If you want that, you can just go to the fucking park and just watch people, which is entertaining. It is fun to people watch. I do it occasionally with, my parents or my girlfriend, a friend, just kind of sit on a park bench and watch all the crazies walk by. But is that as fun
On the formalism side, there was
as
Georges
this?
Méliès, telling highly stylized stories with elaborate
That? Like, that's crazy. Like, that's entertaining, right? I mean, I wouldn't want to take acid and go watch that. That'd fuck me up. But that's way more entertaining to see that kind of crazy shit, right? Just more creative.
sets, costumes, and special effects, with no interest in imitating reality. Realism and formalism constitute opposite ends of a spectrum, and pretty much all of cinema
Ah, see? See? Who told you that one, right? I know there's some really smart, sexy guy with a beard that already explained this one to you guys.
falls somewhere on that spectrum. The majority of mainstream cinema sits around the middle, at a point that would become known as classicism.
Pretty sure I told you that too. Gosh, I don't know who that sexy guy with that beard is, but damn, he's really acing it, isn't he?
This mixes elements of both sides. It uses formalist aspects like non-diegetic music, sets, visual effects, editing, and camera angles, but all in service of a story with the intention of not drawing attention to the filmmaking. The
Also want to note it said non-diegetic sound there. You probably don't know what that is. We'll deep dive into that on the sound day. Diegetic and non-diegetic sounds. That's a whole aspect of the eighth, or I think it's the seventh element of film theory, which is sound.
idea is for it to seem real. An example of this would be the work of Steven Spielberg. In a movie Bazan would love, he often lets entire scenes play out in extended master shots, but combines that with formalist elements like heightened lighting, pronounced angles and framing, and prominent use of music. When mainstream filmmaking moves from the center of the spectrum, it tends to move toward realism, and I'm basing this off of the movies that get made by Hollywood studios as well as their commercial receptions. You can see a shift take place over the course of the 20th century, as movies with greater formalist tendencies, like musicals, became increasingly rare. And in the 21st century, moves toward realism have been embraced by mass audiences, as evidenced by the rise of filmmakers like Christopher Nolan and Paul Greengrass. Formalism is admittedly a harder sell, as it willfully moves away from a familiar reality. Look at a formalist blockbuster like Ang Lee's Hulk. That movie has a lot of problems, but if you ask a random person what they didn't like about it, odds are the first thing they'll point to is the heavy use of comic book panel-style split screens, the most obvious and pronounced formalist element. The split screens, while an interesting experiment, don't work because they clash with the tone of the movie. Most of it is presented as a pretty serious psychological drama. The acting is naturalistic, and it's shot in a mostly classical style. But the editing is so stylized and artificial that it leaves the audience confused as to what they're supposed to feel. A similar technique works perfectly in Edgar
Wow, that's interesting. That's kind of cool. It's been a long time since I've seen that Hulk movie, so that's really wild though. Honestly, I think that's a really brilliant fucking idea. That's cool. See, I myself tend more towards formalism. I actually think that I put a lot of the superhero movies closer to formalism just based off of that checklist that we went over earlier. So, but we'll go over all that later.
writes Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. The stylized editing fits neatly with the heightened comedic tone of the film, and since the story is told from the point of view of the emotionally immature title character, the comic book style presentation makes sense. These days, it seems for more formalist movies to succeed, they require either the validation of major awards, like with La La Land, or they have to come from a director who is a known quantity, like Wes Anderson, who, it must be pointed out, has moved further down the spectrum toward formalism with each successive film. So, let's talk about the most extreme example of formalism in mainstream American cinema in the 21st century. A movie that was soundly rejected by audiences upon its release.
What do you think this is going to be? Just going to pause it for a minute to give it a guess. The most formalist movie ever that was rejected by audiences upon its release. Oh, gosh, I don't know. I was going to say Frame Roger Rabbit, but that wasn't rejected by Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but I don't think that was rejected by audiences. Buckballs, man. I don't know. That's a good question. Let's see.
But that I will happily proclaim as a masterpiece. The Wachowskis' 2008 film.
Oh. I was not going to guess that. Oh.
Heavenly beauty unfolds on stage.
I remember when the trailer for this movie dropped, and the confusion and derision with which it was met. A major repeated complaint was that it looked like a cartoon. Well, yeah. That's the point. I mean, looking at any frame of it, does this seem like a movie that has any interest in recreating reality? The entire thing is Bazan's worst nightmare. And why is that a bad thing? This is a movie clearly set in...
It's very pretty, though. I'll say that. I've never seen this movie, to be honest. I remember when it came out, but 2008, I was in high school. The last thing I gave a fuck about was Speed Racer. You know what I'm saying? So I was, wanting to get laid, party, do some drugs, that kind of thing. I didn't give a fuck about no Speed Racer stuff, but that's a very beautiful movie, honestly.
In an exaggerated sci-fi cartoon world. It's about a family of car racers whose last name is Racer, and the main character, a guy whose entire goal in life is to drive cars really, really fast, is literally named Speed. Even on paper, nothing about this is realistic. As unreal as the world is, the one thing that is totally authentic is the emotions. This movie is achingly sincere. The characters' motivations are big and broad and over the top. They state their beliefs bluntly and without a hint of irony.
It doesn't matter if racing never changes. What matters is if we let racing change us.
Speed loves his family. He loves his brother who died in an accident years earlier. He loves racing, the artistry of it, and the feeling it gives him. Speed Racer is about cartoon characters in a cartoon world full of oversized emotions. So, on a formal level, what's the best way to execute that? Well, by making everything about the visual presentation and storytelling equally big and bright and unreal. Aesthetically, the color palette, costumes, and set design are all exaggerated to cartoonish levels. Everything is hypersaturated, and even the depth of field appears to be infinite, not imitating human eyesight or any kind of camera lens in existence. And the filmmaking itself doesn't follow any classical model of visual storytelling. Space and time are willfully manipulated, with shots melding into one another to the point where you can't tell where one ends and the next begins. And at
Wow, that's crazy. I really want to watch this fucking movie now.
the climax, the euphoric
This movie would be good on acid. I bet you this would tripping your balls off. Ooh, this would be a good time.
emotional peak of the movie, the style moves even further away from realism into complete surrealism, becoming a symphony of color and movement and sound that match the oversized emotions of the characters. So what I wonder is, how would realism improve this? When the characters and world and story are already so over the top, shouldn't form follow function? For a story about a hyperactive guy named Speed Racer, obsessed with driving cars fast, doesn't it make sense to tell it with bright colors and constant motion, making a movie that looks and feels the same way he probably perceives the world? If you're gonna make a Speed Racer movie, I wouldn't want it any other way. See, what's more important than realism is verisimilitude.
Verisimilitude. I always call it verisimilitude. Verisimilitude. Okay, well, he'll tell you what that is.
In other words, a movie's inner truth. A movie doesn't need to adhere to some imposed concept of reality, simply its own concept of reality. Every movie essentially creates its own reality, and in its opening minutes gives the viewer an understanding of how that reality functions and the rules by which it operates. What matters is maintaining the
That's Trainspotting. I'm sure you know that. Everybody knows that movie. That's a good movie. If you don't know that movie, you need to watch that one. Definitely not on acid, because there was a crawling baby on a ceiling in this movie that would fucking scar you for life. So
verisimilitude and sticking to its own rules. An example of a movie breaking its own reality is the much maligned scene from Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, in which Mutt Williams gracefully swings through a jungle like Spider-Man, accompanied by an army of monkeys. The reality of this world had previously been established as heightened, but still rough and messy and tactile. So a moment as impossible and clearly artificial as this breaks our verisimilitude, taking us out of the movie. As much as people hate the infamous Bat credit card scene from Batman and Robin, it makes sense within the reality of that movie. But put that same moment in The Dark Knight, and it would shatter our verisimilitude. Now, Speed Racer, as unrealistic as it is, lets us know in the opening minutes what rules it's playing by. As soon as we see this shot, we know what kind of reality we're dealing with. And once we accept that, we're fine, and the movie never breaks the immersion. So how important is realism anyway? Is it, as Bazan argued, the ultimate goal of cinema? Well, talking about this in 2017, I think it's pretty clear that it isn't. Realism is an approach, just as formalism is, and great filmmaking involves knowing when and how to choose the right approach. Speed Racer opened in theaters the same summer as The Dark Knight, and you couldn't ask for two better counterpoints. One is the most realism-focused blockbuster of our time, the other the most formalist. One was the highest-grossing film of the year, the other one of the biggest flops. I love The Dark Knight. I think it's a brilliant film, but in terms of filmmaking, Speed Racer is the one I find more interesting. By plunging headfirst into formalism, it does new things with the medium, showing us things we've never seen before. And, in my opinion, it chooses the best possible way to tell that particular story. Audiences are attracted to realism for the same reason they're attracted to sequels. It's familiar, they understand it. But if cinema is going to keep evolving and moving in new directions, we need to be able to embrace formalism. Making something realistic doesn't always mean making it better. So what does this have to do with Marvel and color grading? Well, Marvel's movies already sit slightly to the formalism side of classicism. Looking at their shot choices, use of visual effects, and general production design, these are clearly not focused on realism the way Nolan's Batman movies were. And the general tone of all these movies is upbeat and fun. So having slightly more vibrant colors would not suddenly plunge this into Speed Racer territory. If anything, it would enhance the tone and style the movies have already achieved. As much as realism might seem like the priority, sometimes a little bit of formalism can strengthen a film's verisimilitude. And by now, I think I've used those three words enough for one lifetime, so let's end it here.
Cool beans.
Hey.
Hey guys,
Cool
thanks for
beans.
watching.
Shout out
So
to the
this is
channel. Yeah, so it kind of sounds like that whole video was just him making an argument for why everybody who told him he was wrong about Marvel is actually wrong. But it was still a really good movie. I did subscribe to his channel because I found that YouTube video pretty entertaining. So, yeah, if you did the same, give him a like and subscribe. But it's a really good rundown of realism in movies. So, definitely gives you an idea of just exactly what formalism is and what realism is. And you can see there, you know, as he described, how a lot of movies are kind of a combination. They sit, you know, closer to the classical element. You know, like if classical was his nose and the rest of the screen was a spectrum, formalism over here, right? A lot of movies kind of sit right on his nose in the classical area, but kind of share similarities with formalism and realism. They kind of combine aspects of it, maybe lean closer to one side or the right. But anyways, as I said, okay, let's read what No Film School has to say. I kind of like this website. I've been using them a lot when we talk about film theory, just because they got a big ass catalog of articles to choose from, so it's very helpful. So let's see what they have to say about realism in TV. So what is realism in film and TV? We go over the definition and examples of realism for writers and directors. That's right, this article I think was written more for the writer director / perspective. Hold on, I got a burp. Ooh, that was a big one. Okay, here, let's bring you guys over to this screen right here. Hey, again, I had beard itches during the YouTube show. Itches under the beard. I was like, I was trying to itch it without fucking up my beard. But anyways, okay. So realism in film and TV. When you sit down to watch a film or a TV show, you're not watching real life. But there are many writers and directors who spend a great deal of time trying to get you to believe it is. Sure, we want people to buy into our world building, but there's also a whole group of people trying to make movies and TV shows steeped in realism. In the vast realm of filmmaking and television, the concept of realism holds a special place. It's an artistic approach that strives to predict the world as it truly is, unfiltered and unembellished. So how would you define these concepts? How would you define these concepts? What are some examples of them? Okay, so that's not me being a retard. They fucked that sentence up. What are some examples of them across film and TV? Let's dive into realism together. Realism definition. Realism in film and TV refers to an artistic approach and narrative style that aims to represent life, characters, settings, and events as closely as possible to their real-world counterparts. As we already know, It emphasizes authenticity, avoiding excessive stylization, melodrama, or artificiality in favor of depicting the complexities, nuances, and everyday aspects of human existence. The goal of realism is to create a sense of familiarity, relatability, and emotional resonance with the audience, allowing them to connect with the on screen world on a personal and genuine level. How to add realism to your project. For all you directors out there, realism isn't just about the story feeling grounded. It has to do with the way you shoot and the kinds of stories you tell. Yeah, on that note, I just wanted to say, obviously, as we saw in the bullet points that I gave you back now, on location sets and props, sometimes that's easy to see in a movie. My beard is all seven shades of all over the place. Sometimes it's real easy to see in a movie if they're shooting on set. You can tell that it's very clearly an on-set shoot. Other times it's not so easy. Sorry, I'm bringing you back over here because my beard is like going wild on this side. It's like all those itches were getting to me, man. I was like a dog, like looking for a wall to scratch my face against. Yeah. So where was I at? Sometimes it's a lot harder to tell if this was shot on location or using an actual set, right? Sometimes it's difficult to know because nowadays sets can be very elaborate and look very much like real life, and it can be difficult to tell the difference between on location and set. Sometimes you got to do a little research into the movie to know if they're shooting on location or not, right? So, anyways, in a realistic film or TV show, the portrayal of characters' emotions, behaviors, and interactions often mirrors real life experiences. Authentic locations, naturalistic acting, and dialogue that resembles natural conversation are frequently employed to enhance the genuine feel of the narrative. Realism may extend to production design, cinematography, and storytelling techniques, all of which work together to present a world that feels recognizable and familiar. Here's an important thing to remember. This isn't a documentary. Realism is not a strict replication of life, but rather an interpretation of it through the lens of your artistic expression. Filmmakers and TV creators may still make creative choices and adaptations to enhance the storytelling while maintaining the core essence of authenticity. So it doesn't have to be a documentary, right? Like, obviously, that's left the beard. That's obvious that, not every, and even some documentaries will have some level of classicalness to them, right? They will have professional actors in the movie. They will shoot on set and things like that, right? Not all documentaries are realistic, neither. That's another important thing to note is that, some documentaries, one of the documentaries I have on my list ended up being a documentary that was kind of full of shit or a little bit hyped up more so than it really, it wasn't very realistic. So, in any case, yeah, it doesn't mean you have to make it a documentary. Understanding realism in film and TV. Realism in film and TV is an approach that seeks to portray life without excessive stylization or dramatization. It's an attempt to capture the mundane, the ordinary, and the authentic aspects of human existence and hopefully make them entertaining and meaningful to the audience. The goal is to elicit an emotional response from the audience by connecting them to characters and situations they can recognize from their own lives. It's a way to connect with the watchers. And this is a little bit on the history of it. I think we already kind of went, well, this is a short bit, so fuck it. Let's go into it. So where did realism come from in film and television? The roots of cinematic realism can be traced back to the early 20th century with pioneers like Italian neo-realists and French poetic realists. Italian neo-realism, for instance, emerged in the aftermath of World War II, focusing on the struggles of ordinary people in a war-torn country. Filmmakers like Roberto Rossellini and Vittorio De Sica shot on location using non-professional actors, blending reality and fiction to create impactful stories. In France, poetic realism embraced a more lyrical approach while still depicting the harshness of everyday life. As those movies spread across the globe, people began to imitate them. This spread of a new way to make film and TV has continued to evolve over the decades since. How to identify realism in film. So here's that bullet point list again. 1, naturalistic acting, non-professional actors, right? Encouraging actors to deliver performances that mirror real-life emotions and reactions. This often involves improvisation and eschewing traditional theatrical styles. Authentic, so no over-the-top acting is what they're saying there, right? So, sorry, Nicolas Cage, you're out. Authentic locations. Filming on actual locations, even if they are imperfect or less visually appealing, adds an element of truth to the setting. Handheld camera. Using handheld cameras or techniques like shaky cam can create a documentary-like feel, immersing the audience in the action. Minimalist production design, stripping away elaborate sets and props in favor of a more minimalistic approach, can emphasize the reality of the environment. Natural lighting. Utilizing natural lighting sources, even if they are less flattering, can enhance the authenticity of scenes. And conversational dialogue. That's a new one. Crafting dialogue that mirrors real conversations, complete with interruptions, pauses, and overlaps, adds to the authenticity. So here are some of their examples of realism in film. I think I went through these, and I don't know if I had seen any of them. Let's go over them again. Bicycle Thieves, 1948. Definitely haven't seen that one. Oh, that's an Italian neo-realist film directed by Vittorio De Sica. It is a quintessential example of realism in cinema. Set in post-World War II Italy, the film follows a man and his young son as they search for a stolen bicycle, which the father needs to work. The film's use of non-professional actors, authentic locations, and a focus on the struggles of everyday life epitomizes the neo-realistic approach to realism. Boyhood, 2014. I feel like I've heard of that one, but I don't remember if I've seen it. I don't think I have. This stands out as a modern example of realism. Shot over 12 years, the film follows the life of a young boy as he grows into adulthood. The passage of time is captured authentically as the same actors age naturally throughout the production. Oh, wow. Giving the audience a genuine sense of the character's development. That's pretty crazy. The Wire. Okay, I've seen The Wire. The acclaimed television series made by David Simon is known for its realistic portrayal of life in Baltimore, Maryland. The show delves into various facets of the city, including law enforcement, education, politics, and the media, highlighting the complexities and challenges of urban life. The use of non-professional actors, authentic locations, and a focus on systemic issues contribute to its realistic depiction. Amor. Haven't heard of that one. Stark portrayal of the challenges that come with aging and illness. The film depicts an elderly couple's struggle as one of them faces physical and mental decline. Through its minimalistic production design, naturalistic acting, and unflinching exploration of the difficult topics, the film creates an emotionally raw and realistic experience. See, this is something they keep kind of hinting at, this unflinching exploration of difficult topics, focus on systemic issues. I don't know if that needs to be necessary. Like, I haven't seen anything in any of the videos or the research that I've done that says that you need that in order to create a realistic approach. Nor that because you're focusing on systemic issues or exploring difficult topics that somehow is realistic, right? Like, yeah, life has difficult topics, but your exploration of a difficult topic might be wholly unrealistic, right? So, they keep adding this in this particular article as something that is a realistic approach, and I don't know if it really is. Friday Night Lights. I remember that television show. A high school football team. I never watched it, but its community in a small Texas town. The show's emphasis on character development, authentic sports sequences, and the challenges faced by both players and residents captures the spirit and struggles of small town life in a genuine way. Winter's Bone? Never heard of that one neither. Tells the story of a young woman searching for her missing father in a poverty-stricken rural community. The film's use of non-professional actors from the region, coupled with its authentic portrayal of the Ozarks, adds its sense of realism and grit. Oh, balls. I just heard my fridge shut off. I haven't streamed in 2 days, so I forget that I have a whole setup here going, and one of them is to shut the fucking fridge off so you can't hear it when I'm talking. Bummer. Forgot to do that. But the good news is we've been free of pops and clicks for the whole stream, I feel like. I haven't heard a single pop or a click. I'll have to listen back, because I keep my volume pretty low when I'm on stream, so there might have been a pop or a click that I didn't hear. But so far, I haven't heard shit, so that's good. And my latency is just sexy. Look at my latency. Look at this. Let me brag about this for a second. Look at that sexy latency right there. Yeah. I mean, it's not exactly where you want it to be, but it's not bad. So I don't know if that's where my clicks and my pops are coming from. I don't know. We'll have to keep looking into this. Yeah. Okay. Anyways. Fruitvale Station. I have heard of this one. Never seen it. Based on the true story of Oscar Grant's death at the hands of police officers. This film, directed by Ryan Coogler, is a powerful exploration of racial injustice and police brutality. By employing naturalistic acting and presenting events in a documentary-style-like manner, the film brings a heightened sense of realism to a tragic life events. In the Mood for Love, directed by Wong Kar-wai, this visually stunning film portrays the emotional connection between two neighbors whose spouses are having affairs. The film's deliberate pacing, exquisite cinematography, and nuanced performances capture the subtleties of unspoken emotions, creating a realistic portrayal of repressed desire and longing. Before Sunrise, 1995. Haven't heard of that one neither. An American Honey. I've heard of that one, I feel like. A road drama follows a group of young magazine sellers as they travel across the American Midwest. The film's use of non-professional actors and spontaneous, I don't know that word, verite style cinematography creates an authentic atmosphere that captures the energy and uncertainty of youth on the fringes of society. All right. I almost didn't catch that burp. You almost got a burp right in your eardrum. But I got you. Okay, so that's their list of all I've seen is The Wire, but that's their list of suggestions for realistic movies or realism type movies. I'll obviously link this in the description for the video on YouTube so you can pour over that list in your own time. On my list, so let's check out my list, right? Because I worked hard on this list and I still probably got some things wrong. But if we go here, obviously by genres, I try to split it up by genres. Documentaries, overwhelmingly realist with some occasional aspects of classical. War, mostly classical. Western, mostly classical. Crime drama, mostly classical. Horror, sci-fi, and superhero all seem to be, to me, formalist or closer to formalism than realism. You know, I guess you could say they're probably, a lot of them are classical, but to me, they seemed very formalist. Filmmakers, I don't think there was anyone that I put on here as a realist filmmaker, at least this is just kind of my list of directors I fuck with. And I think Taylor Sheridan was the only one that I have the word realism on. Oh no, here. Let's see. Okay, formalist, classical, formalist. Lars von Trier, there's that name again, mostly classical with aspects of both realism and formalism. If you think of the movie, what is it, Nymphomaniac? If you haven't seen that movie, it's a good one. Just, I guess, keep a bottle of lube next to the table because you're probably going to get a hard on at some point. But, you know, anyways, that one definitely has some aspects of realism. It definitely has those very long, drawn-out shots. In spite of the fact that it uses a surprisingly large amount of professional actors and actresses, it still has a lot of these characteristics of realism. It has a lot of non-professional actors, no special effects in the movie that I'm aware of. It seems like most of it is on location, particularly in use of sets and props. They're very minimal on sets and props, very natural lighting. It's surprising to see some of your favorite actors and actresses in natural lighting in this movie. You'd be surprised at how not handsome and not beautiful a lot of them really are. And then minimal editing. The editing was pretty extensive in that I believe they had some pretty extensive editing, but it does have a documentary style. It's a woman telling, I think, a priest or somebody in a monastery about her sex addiction, and it follows. Yeah, the story is, I think it's like 2 movies long too, and it follows in a more documentary style like setting. So that would be more on the realism side, whereas like Antichrist or Melancholia would be closer to the formalism aspect, where you got some, you know, especially in Antichrist, you're using a lot more of the special effects, almost exclusively professional actors, and you get a lot of slow motion, speed ups, a lot of editing, a lot of lighting. Some shots are pure black and white for stylistic purposes, so a lot more stylism involved. Let's see, classical. Yeah, I said classical with the exception of Nope for Jordan Peele, which I thought was closer to formalism. Ari Aster, classical with the exception of Beau is Afraid. Beau is Afraid was very formalist. Robert Eggers, Nosferatu 2. Also very formalist, mostly classical though. And then put mostly classical with some elements of realism for Taylor Sheridan. He's a writer. He was the one that wrote Hell and High Water. Now I'm blanking on everything single thing he's done. He did Yellowstone, Landman. I haven't seen Landman. He did Hell and High Water, Sicario, and Wind River. And the whole point of those three movies was to give you as much of a realistic perspective on people's lives in the Midwest as you really could, or in the, I guess what a lot of people call that like a neo-Western trilogy is what I hear a lot of people referring to those movies as. They give you modern day life in the West, I guess. Where there used to be cowboys and Indians, there is now poor white people robbing banks, Native Americans, and what was Sicario? Oh, Mexican cartels. So here's some my examples of realism. The first two are documentaries, Facing Ali and Pumping Iron. If you haven't seen those are good documentaries. Both very inspirational documentaries. Facing Ali is a documentary where they talk to all of the boxers that faced Ali, hence Facing Ali. That is a dope fucking documentary, by the way. If you haven't seen that, check that out. Very inspirational. Pumping Iron is a documentary on Arnold Schwarzenegger that is equal parts hilarious and inspirational. That documentary ended up being a little bit of Bologna in some parts of it, right? Where he talks about, his diet and things like that. They don't go into like his steroids and shit like that, So some parts of it weren't completely realistic, but it is a documentary, right? And it follows this guy around. It's shot documentary style. All of the set pieces, everything is on location at either his bodybuilding competitions or Gold's Gym, or in his living room where he's talking about how much weed he smokes, or how working out makes him feel like he's coming, as he says. I can't really do the good Arnold Schwarzenegger voice. I have like two friends who are just like experts at it, and they just randomly quote this documentary all day long because there's some pretty funny quotes from Arnold Schwarzenegger in that, and not intended to be funny either, which makes them even funnier. Let's see, 1917 was a good war drama. If you guys don't know that movie, I need to pull up this so I can pop some of these movies up as I'm talking about them. The 1917 movie was the one that was shot in one continuous take. Let's hit Internet Movie Database. There we go. 1917, this one was shot in one continuous take, the whole movie. And it follows a guy in the World War in 1917. And it's pretty entertaining, but the whole point is to give you some kind of realistic idea of what it would be like to be a soldier in the war. So that's kind of the whole point of the movie. Again, if you go through the list, it did have professional actors, used a lot of non-professional ones as well. It did have high special effects, though, right? So even though I got it on my list, where'd my list go? Even though I have it on my list of realism, it was just the most realistic war movie I could think of, but it still employed a lot of special effects, for the use of, war, people dying, shit blowing up, right? A lot of it is on location. They do shoot a lot of the movie outside and use natural outside lighting. There is still sets and props, though. They add a lot of sets and props to the movie. Again, very minimal editing because it's shot in one continuous take. A lot of natural lighting because they're shooting a lot of it outside. And it doesn't have a documentary style, but that one long continuous take gives it the feeling of a documentary style. Another TV show that came out recently that would be similar would be Adolescence. Every episode shot in one continuous take, shot on multiple sets. They're giving you all the long car drives and all the bullshit in between different sets. They have professional actors in there, but they're not super well-known professional actors. But the whole point is to make it seem as realistic as possible, right? That's the whole point of the movie Adolescence, is to give you the feel of this is realistic. Natural lighting, it does have some of a documentary style feel to it because of that long continuous takes. Minimal special effects too. So you would throw that on the list too. I don't have that on my list because I don't have that. That's on like Netflix. And to be honest, I'm not a fan of that particular movie. I could do a whole stream on why I think that movie sucks and I don't like that TV show, Adolescence, but I'm not going to get into it right here. Just suffice it to say, they specifically made it seem real for the purpose of I think, propaganda for taking something that's not real and trying to make it seem real for the purpose of scaring the shit out of the audience is what they're trying to do with that TV show. But that's another conversation for another time. Skinamarink is a horror movie that has plenty of formalist elements to it, but I feel like there's definitely elements of realism in there, right? If we go back to the list, okay, Skinamarink uses non-professional actors, has no special effects, it is on location, all shot in a single house, uses no props in the movie. It does have a lot of editing. There is a lot of editing, so the editing is not minimal, but it does have a lot of those very long takes that, as we saw in the video and then in previous articles on the subject, are used quite heavily in realist movies. So there are a lot of very long continuous takes in there. The lighting is all natural lighting in the movie, actually. And then it isn't shot like documentary style, but it certainly feels like it has a documentary style. Compare that to formalism. No professional actors, no special effects, does not speed up or slow down time. Lighting and sound is used to create exaggerations in the film. Lighting, even though it is natural lighting, a lot of the camera angles do add to exaggerations in the film. And it does break the illusion of reality. Although, I guess I don't know if that's the purpose. It does try to make it feel as realistic as possible. Again, like I was kind of saying about Adolescence, Skinamarink does attempt to make you feel like this thing that's happening is as real as possible, for the purpose of scaring you, right? I Spit on Your Grave is an old school horror movie, pretty infamous for a pretty nasty depiction of rape that's extremely uncomfortable. Has that element of realism to it. Again, also it uses non-professional actors, very minimal special effects. It would be more in the classical, I assume, but because I had no non-professional actors, a lot of it is shot on location with natural lighting out in the woods. There is special effects when it gets to some of the gorier. I Spit on Your Grave was the original OG revenge horror movie. If you guys, revenge movies, it's a whole subgenre nowadays. They're all pretty much the same. Group of men rapes a woman, woman finds them one at a time and kills them, right? Pretty standard revenge movie fare. I Spit on Your Grave was like the OG from, I think, 1974 or 73. Really tough movie to watch. When they get into some of the kills, you get a lot of the special effects in there. And then editing is there, is present, and not for the sake of speeding up or slowing down time, but mostly for the sake of time lapse. Okay. Does use all natural lighting mostly throughout the movie, and then it does have that distinct kind of documentary style. I think it would go a little bit closer for the sake of just telling a story. So I would, nowadays I would probably throw that in the classical example, but like I say here, it's elements of realism, not full-blown realism. But we have a good list here: Cannibal Holocaust, Lake Mundo, Hell House LLC, Paranormal Activity, and The Blair Witch Project. What do all those movies have in common? Well, they are horror mockumentaries. That whole subgenre of horror, the mockumentary subgenre, relies very heavily on realism. They almost always use non-professional actors. If you look at that list again, there's not a single title on that list that uses professional actors. In fact, Cannibal Holocaust specifically used actors, temporarily changed their names during the shooting, and then changed them back after the show so that if people looked up or tried to look into what happened to the actors, they would think they died. They would think they went away after the show. That was so effective that the government got involved because they legitimately thought that actors died during the making of this, what they thought was a documentary at the time. The government got involved because they thought the actors died because they couldn't find them anymore because their names just disappeared. So non-professional actors even going out of the way to change their names. No special effects. That's not entirely true with some of these. Paranormal Activity would be a big one, uses some special effects, but very minimal use of it. Very, very, very teeny tiny use of it. Cannibal Holocaust would be in the extreme. Cannibal Holocaust is notorious on the list of some of the more fucked up movies you could watch. And one of those reasons, which is a good reason, is because they do actually kill a fuck ton of animals in the making of the movie, right? So trigger warning there. Actual animal brutality on camera. Not cool, I did have read some things that the cast did eat the animals, as did a lot of the because they did shoot that movie with tribal people, what would you call them, indigenous people in Brazil or wherever they shot it at. And the indigenous people did supposedly eat all the animals that they killed during the making of the movie, but they still killed them very brutally, right? There's a turtle in there that they like hack it up into bits while it's still alive, and you can see on screen its heart is still pumping while they're ripping its head off and shit, and it's pretty disturbing. But again, no special effects, right? All shot on location. Most of these films are shot on location. I think the exception would be Lake Mundo was shot on a set, but Hell House LLC, Paranormal Activity, Blair Witch, Cannibal Holocaust, all shot on location. Minimal editing. They do include editing, but a lot of the editing is very sneaky, right? Like they're editing without you in a way that you're not supposed to notice that editing is taking place, right? Or the editing is happening in a documentary style of editing, right? So like Lake Mundo actually is set up to be a documentary. It is actually like what are those, like Lifetime documentaries where they're talking to the people who were involved in the issue, and then they show a recreation of the scene using non-professional actors. The whole, it's set up to make you feel like it's actually a documentary on something that happened, right? Cannibal Holocaust too is set up to look like an actual documentary. The other three, the Blair Witch Project, Paranormal Activity, and Hell House are meant to be found footage films, right? So I guess they wouldn't actually be mockumentary. They would be found footage. But Lake Mundo and Cannibal Holocaust are mockumentary all the way. So absolutely documentary style, natural lighting used for most of them. So those would be a really interesting and unique example. Found footage and mockumentary films in the horror genre tend to be heavily on the realism side. So I thought that was kind of interesting, right? Not something you would realize, until you looked into your filmography and realized, oh shit, look at that. Like that would be one of the best representations of realism film that you can get modern day, So there you have it. That is realism. We're taking a little bit too much time to dive into it. I'm doing a little bit too much talking. We're going to jump right into classical. We're going to go down the spectrum from realism to classical to formalism. So again, classical, professional actors, minimal or no special effects, on location or in studio, editing used for time-lapse only, lighting and sound used to create a mood. So let's go ahead and watch what is classical film theory from BBP Real Insights, smaller channel, so give them a like and subscribe if you like their shit. We're going to read their article, BBP, was it, right? Yeah, BBP, Beverly Boy Productions. We're going to read their article on what classical, they call it classical film theory. I don't know what the deal is with that. This isn't film theory. This is just a type of film. As you can see, it's got that same bullet list right there, So, but we're going to run through their article real quick, and then we have a really short video of Steven Spielberg talking about why you should watch classical films or why they're important, right? So let's go ahead. I'll switch you over to the YouTube screen, as I call it. And okay, take a listen, check it out.
What is classical film theory? Film theory is crucial regardless if you're an aspiring filmmaker or a knowledge enthusiast. It's a scholarly approach to film psychoanalysis. The term classical film theory signifies unique eras in filmmaking or certain periods of cinematic history. It is one of many theories. What is film theory? Film theory provides a foundation for comprehending cinema, its connection to reality, other arts, individual viewers, and society. In essence, film theory dissects films and shows based on factors such as creation process, societal interaction, and viewer impact. Film theorists analyze films to determine their societal roles. This includes examining different aspects like...
I just had to pause to admire this man's beard. Like, it's so fucking straight and uniform and kept so well. What the fuck kind of fucking beard oil does this fucker use? I can never get my shit looking like that. My shit's always poofed out all over the place. But anyways, just had to point that out. Fuck this guy and his beard.
Like lighting, sound, and editing techniques. They delve into a film's components like the type, the shots, angles, colors, and the inclusion and handling of sound. The classical film theory. Classical film theory is a blend of realism and formalism. It accentuates genuine interactions between people with manipulated creative production elements. These films generally feature professional actors and are filmed on location or in studios using light and sound to craft moods. Additionally, they utilize editing for time lapses and minimally use special effects, maintaining an air of authenticity throughout the film. Classical film theory often includes dramas heavily focused on real human interactions, with minimal reliance on special effects. Not to be mistaken with classic movies, classical film theory is a form of film that places real, unique human connections at its core. In sum, classical film theory produces films that authentically depict human interactions through the manipulation of creative production techniques. For more great industry info, like and subscribe to Beverly Boy Productions today.
Okay, so quick, easy video, kind of runs down through it. Basically gives us the same thing we got over here, right? I think it kind of goes over the same thing actually in their article. Classical film theory represents a mix between realism and formalism, in which film emphasizes the authentic interactions between real people with a manipulation of the creative production elements taking place, right? And this is just going over film theory. Let's see. Film theorists, excuse me. Theorists believe that these types of films have the following characteristics. Professional actors, filmed on location or in a studio, use lighting and sound to create the desired mood, include editing to create a time lapse, add minimal use of special effects, if any at all. A form of film. Furthermore, classical film theory typically includes dramas. Oh, I think they just said that exact thing in their. Okay, well, fuck 'em. We'll go over to what Mr. Steven Spielberg has to say. Let's, hear what he's going to say about it.
I come into contact with a lot of young people, and I found that a lot of these people know all my movies really even better than I do. And they know all of Marty's films, and they know all of Brian De Palma's films and George Lucas's films, and they're getting to know all of Quentin Tarantino's three films. And, but what's happening is they don't know much beyond that. And when I say, what are your favorite films from the old days, from the black and white days of the 30s and 40s, I don't get a lot of answers that give me comfort. And I'm finding that if people are going to just study the movie brats of the 1970s, what they're learning is a pretty weak carbon copy, because all the movie brats learned from the masters of the 40s and 50s and 30s, and I'm sure those in the 50s and 40s learned from the silent movie masters. And so we're all handing influences down and inspiring from generation to generation. And I kind of am a little bit sad that a lot of the young people today kind of have a cutoff point for their own personal influences, and that's like they don't know a lot of pictures in the pre-60s. My kids will always ask me, is it in black and white? Because I always show them movies, and their big fear is it in black and white? And when I say it is, they don't want to see it. So what's true is the first knee-jerk reaction of my children is they don't want to see a black and white movie. But then I say, you're going to have to. You're just going to have to. And I promise you, 10 minutes into the picture, they don't know whether it's in black and white or color, whether it's 1:6:6 or 2:3:5 aspect ratio. They're into the movie. And by and large, when they like the movie, when it's over, they're raving about it.
Okay. Well, that is a beneficial thing, I guess, to hear. I don't know why, but I always like Steven Spielberg, watching him talk. He seems like such like a dad figure, like you're just classical dad. This is a good time to point out this. I'm just going to go ahead and throw the blame on this website right here, okay? Because I got the video from these guys, and what they're talking about here, what Steven Spielberg is talking about here, is not classical type of movies. He's talking about classic movies, which is very different. Classic movies, this is, I guess, just a good side way to get into classic movies versus classical movies, right? So, classic movies generally refers to films that have achieved enduring popularity and influence, often recognized as timeless works of art. That's what he's talking about as classic movies. We're talking about classical movies. on the other hand, often describe films made according to a specific style or narrative structure prevalent in the early to mid 20th century Hollywood, characterized by clear storytelling, strong character arcs, and a focus on cause and effects and narrative. Um, so yeah, we're talking about slightly two different things, right? He's talking about classic movies, meaning the old school films from way back in the day, black and white movies. When we're talking about classical, we mean like the actual movie type, which is different than a classic movie, right? Like Casablanca or whatever, Citizen Kane, the black and white movies that he grew up with and loved. It's an interesting opinion, though. I do think that it is worthwhile to watch some of those old movies. Um, it is, it is. I would say, like, yeah, to be honest, man, I've watched a few, Psycho. I've watched a lot of the old Alfred Hitchcock movies. Here, we can flip back over to here. I have watched a lot of those old, like, Alfred Hitchcock movies. And as much as I love scary movies and thrillers and mysteries, I still don't get the same excitement out of the movie, right? That's the honest truth. Is the older movies aren't as exciting to younger people. I think a lot of us are just so used to special effects, and I guess we're used to special effects. We're used to a much. God, what else am I looking for here? It's just not what we're used to. Is really at the end of the day, and it's hard to kind of get into it a little bit, and which can kind of bring down the enjoyment level just a tiny bit. They were very limited in what they could do with those old classic movies. And it is very difficult to watch one of those old classic movies. He can talk about his kids enjoying a black and white movie, because you can get away with shitty effects with a kid, right? You go to watch, like, okay, the old black and white King Kong. The reality is you can, most modern day people watch the black and white King Kong, which is a great movie in its own right. And you can tell, obviously, King Kong is like a toy or a lump of clay shaped into a monkey in a small town, a small city made that this big, right? A model city. And it pulls you out of the movie a little bit, because we're at a higher standard of effects now where that sort of thing just kind of rips you out of it. Even movies from the 90s, man. I personally am not a huge I don't harp too much on that. Like, I can enjoy movies from the 70s and 80s even if they have shitty effects, because I know where they came from and it doesn't bother me. But once you get into like the old black and white movies, it kind of does hit me a little bit where I'm just like, man, it's hard to get into this because I can see that this is like a fucking spaceship attached to a fucking string, being dragged across a paper moon, and it's hard to let yourself get sucked into the movie. And so, I don't know, I do think it's important, but I think every generation does that, I mean, generations of musicians, I actually, funny enough, I had a guy come up to me, a friend of mine come up to me in the gym today. Him and this other guy were arguing about something. And I walked into the locker room and they came up to me and they're like, Tony, we got to ask you some questions. And I said, okay. And they said, my friend asked, he's like, name 5 Elvis Presley songs. And I was like, Hound Dog. There's one about something else or the other thing. I was like, I got 2 of them. And I was like, I don't know, man. And the guy goes, see, told you. He's like, okay, now name 5 Michael Jackson songs. And I was like, Thriller, Beat It. At the time they put me on the spot. So like Annie, You're Okay. What Easy as 1, 2, 3. I couldn't. Some of I was like, oh, I don't know, dude. Like, I'm on the spot. I can only think of those 2 obvious ones. Fuck me, all right, my bad. And they're they were arguing over who was a bigger influence on music, Elvis Presley or Michael Jackson. And I was like, oh, dude, you can't argue that. There were like 2 completely different styles of music and completely different eras, different times. I mean, even to compare objective measurements of popularity, like album sales, you would have to, adjust for inflation, adjust for a population, all kinds of shit. I don't think they're comparable. Like, I don't think anybody can fully understand just how influential those 2 guys were on the music industry and even other industries. Elvis had a huge influence on the film industry. Michael Jackson had a massive influence on music videos. When Thriller came out, that was like a completely revolutionary music video. These guys had, Michael Jackson had a heavy influence on how music business is done, like contracts and things are written up. These people, their influence went so far above and beyond just their musical genres. You really can't compare the two. I don't think you can even accurately measure just how big their influence was. So it's a silly argument. And that was my way of getting out of the fact that I couldn't think of 5 songs from either one of those guys. And then I go immediately looked at my Spotify, and I have like 10 songs from each of them, 10, 12 songs from each of those guys. I just don't listen to them. And the reality, is like, dude, most people nowadays aren't going to be able to give you a list of 5 Elvis Presley songs or a list of 5, Michael Jackson songs. They're just, I think more people, it would be easier for people to give you a list of 5 Michael Jackson songs, because there was a lot of Michael Jackson fans in my generation. But not so much Elvis Presley, right? But still, give it 2 more generations, another generation, ask somebody from Generation Z to name 5 Michael Jackson songs. They're probably not going to be able to, because, now, because to them, classical music from Generation Z is like the shit that I was listening to. You know what I'm saying? To them, old music is like AC/DC, right? They're like, oh, those guys are so old. And they are old. But, to them, Elvis Presley is like fucking dinosaurs, bro. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things, man, where I think generations just kind of do that, man. They look at the previous generation for inspiration, which is why, as a generation, it's, important to make good, high quality art, because the art you make today is what's going to influence the generation of next year, So it's a reason to take it seriously, I guess, if we're going to harp on that. Okay, let's look at some of my examples of classical film, right? We'll throw up that bullet list again and look through some of the examples. So as far as genre goes, like I said, war, western, crime drama, heavily in the classical, definitely, undoubtedly fit most of what happens in these genres. And I don't have like comedy up here, just because at the time, I wasn't necessarily looking at I don't know why I didn't put that in the genres. I guess I just was already going through so many other genres in my playlist. I didn't want to hit the other 3 or 4 genres I had in there. But yeah, those 3 genres specifically almost always fit into the classical films. In horror, sci-fi, and superhero movies, a lot of them are classical, but tend to be formalist. Like I say, well, I'll get to those in a minute. But yeah, mostly classical films with aspects of both realism and formalism for war, western, and crime drama. You'll see a little bit of horror, sci-fi, and superhero too in there. Same with most filmmakers, mostly classical. Quentin Tarantino I put as mostly formalist, and I'll explain myself later in a minute. Coen Brothers, mostly classical. Stanley Kubrick, classical and formalist. I actually put Christopher Nolan, Zack Snyder, Tony Scott, and Guillermo del Toro in formalist for specific reasons. Lars von Trier, Jordan Peele, mostly classical. Ari Aster, Robert Eggers, mostly classical. Actually put Clint Eastwood, mostly classical, and Taylor Sheridan, mostly classical. So like most of the filmmakers I know, mostly classical, right? I did throw some mostly formalism in there, and I'd probably walk some of that back. As far as like, let's see here, Tony Scott and Christopher Nolan, I'd probably walk backwards and say, okay, you could throw them in mostly classical. Guy Ritchie too. But Quentin Tarantino, I'd probably put in mostly classical. But most of the filmmakers tend to be in that classical realm. The list of classical movies, formalism, actually, I had a much bigger list. Classical, some good examples of classical in the war era or war area. Saving Private Ryan, Fury, and Full Metal Jacket were 3 really good examples of classical war films. They just follow a story. Again, if you look at those 3 movies, they all use professional actors, right? Saving Private Ryan, Fury, we're talking Brad Pitt, Tom Hanks. Minimal or no special effects. That's where they kind of lose me. All of these have pretty heavy special effects. Saving Private Ryan and Fury even more so. On location or in studio, you'd have to look it up, because you would want to say that they're all on location because of all of the shots that happen outside, but that doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't shot in a big ass studio, dude. You know, the sinking of the Titanic was shot in an indoor pool, you know. So just because it sounds or seems like that should be on location because it's outside doesn't necessarily mean that it is, right? So I don't know on that. Editing used for time lapse, absolutely. Editing is used for time lapse, and there is no other kind of editing for like slowing down or speeding up in most of those from most of these movies. You're not getting a lot of speeding up or slowing down editing. Lighting and sound used to create a mood, absolutely. I don't think that they use all natural lighting for any of those three movies. I think the lighting is very stylistic to create a mood. So in westerns, you got The Wild Bunch and Man with No Name. I almost put those close to the realism. I would say classical, but with more elements of realism, right? You look at it, they do both use professional actors for their time. If you haven't seen The Wild Bunch, you definitely got to check that movie out. The Wild Bunch is an old cowboy movie that was a fucking badass movie. Talk about classic. 1969, yeah. Real good fucking old school. Look at that goofy ass grin. Isn't that like kind of a scary, creepy, goofy ass grin? Right? But that is such a good fucking movie, man. One of my favorite old school, I might watch that movie tonight. Old school Western movies. So yeah, back to on locate, minimal or no special effects. Minimal special effects in both these, mostly like squibs for gunshots, things like that, but very minimal, very, very minimal. On location or in studio, again, I don't really know, to be honest. You'd have to look into it. Did they shoot these on location or not? I would imagine that at least some aspect of it was shot on location, but also parts of it shot in studios. Only editing for time lapse. There's no editing for, I guess they do use in The Wild Bunch. The Wild Bunch was famous because it was the first use of squibs to show gunshots. It was the first movie to show people actually getting shot, which was like a mind fuck to the audience. The audience was like, oh my God, this movie is so fucking horrifically violent because it showed, the squibs exploding, which was the first time they'd ever done that. It also was the first movie to use slow motion. I believe first movie to use slow motion. Used it in gunfights as people got shot. You'd see them, blah, they'd get shot and then they'd fall back dramatically in slow motion, like, and die. And so that movie was famous for that. So it does slow down time a little bit in The Wild Bunch. But otherwise, it's mostly just used for time lapse. Lighting and sound used to create a mood. They don't go too crazy with the lighting or the sound in either one of those movies. They have those elements of realism, though, to them, right? They do use professional actors. They have minimal special effects. So, they're correct being in the classical movies. But they do have minimal editing, a lot of natural lighting. They do use a little bit of lighting, but mostly natural lighting, not documentary style. They do have elements of it, but they're mostly in classical, right? So I also put American Gangster in there, right? As far as crime dramas, American Gangster, Godfather, Out of the Furnace has a real nitty gritty, wants you to feel like this is very realistic. Uncut Gems was a tough one because the editing is very, very fast and quick paced in that movie. The editing is far from minimal, and editing is a big part of that movie. Really adds the kind of like the what is it like you feel like you're like gonna choke on your own heart, right? There's so much tension. That's it. The tension in that movie is really up there with the editing. And Clockwork Orange, man, this one I had such a difficult time with. I'm pretty sure this one I would redo and throw into closer into formalism. It is classical in the sense that it is just telling you the story, but it is really focusing on creating an alternate reality. And I would put that even closer to formalism, The Clockwork Orange. Reservoir Dogs, The Shining, are two movies. Again, look at the characteristics, professional actors, minimal or no special effects. Shining, you definitely have a lot more on the special effects side. But not compared to like a Marvel movie, right? There's no CGI or anything like that. But picture, the blood coming out of the elevator, things like that are special effects. On location, see, that was the other thing. Shining was shot on location. Reservoir Dogs there is multiple scenes shot in studios, but there is on location scenes in cars and restaurants. Editing used for time lapse. Again, that's pretty much all it's used for in those two movies. Lighting and sound used to create a mood. Yeah, not super crazy with the lighting and the sound. Bone Tomahawk, Silence of the Lambs. We'll skip Bone Tomahawk, but Silence of the Lambs. See, the OG Halloween is a good classical horror movie where it nails all of those classical principles. Even goes a little bit farther into realism, right? Uses non-professional actors, very little side effects, if any at all, right? The only side effects you can really think of is like fake blood, right? It's on location shot, very minimal editing, mostly natural lighting. It just isn't documentary style. It's more classical, used to tell a story style. The original Halloween is, but that's like classical, much closer to realism, right? So all these movies are on that spectrum. Yeah, I put these in the realm of classical, but some of them, like The Shining, would be a horror movie, and The Clockwork Orange would be. I would even put Clockwork Orange in formalism, honestly, but Shining is horror movie that's classical, leaning closer to formalism. Halloween would be classical, leaning closer to realism, right? Saint Maud, really, that was a really good. Um, I don't know if it was recent. I think it was 2019, I think, or 2017. Saint Maud came out. Uh, Same thing, 2019. Very minimal. If we go back, professional actors, yes, check. Minimal special effects, check. Don't know if it's on location or in studio, can't tell you that. Editing only used for time lapse, check. Lighting and sound are used to create a mood. I would say there's even some heavy lighting and sound in that particular movie. Let the Right One In. Ooh, that's a good one that you would throw in the classical for horror. Menu, also good horror comedy that recently came out. And then you had Deadstream and The Bay, which were both. Deadstream was like found footage. The Bay was more mockumentary style. But in both aspects, don't use any professional actors though. I put them in classical instead of realism, even though they don't use professional actors. They do use special effects. That was the big one. In fact, it isn't even minimal special effects. Both those movies, Deadstream is a really good like found footage horror movie and also kind of a comedy. I would definitely highly recommend it. It's a movie about a streamer too, by the way. So streamer streaming, being in a haunted house. I think we've talked about that on stream once before. But both Deadstream and The Bay do have pretty heavy use of special effects. I don't know how much of them is on location. It seems like most of it is on location in Deadstream, but again, you can't really tell. It could be in a studio that was just made to look like a haunted house, right? You know what I'm saying? Editing is only exclusively used for time lapse. Lighting and sound is definitely used to create a mood in Deadstream. The Bay is definitely set up as a documentary style movie. It just has such heavy reliance on special effects that I throw that. It would be like, I guess you could say realism, but closer to classical. Kind of like Clockwork Orange would be formalism, closer to classical, right? Right in the middle of classical and formalism. The Bay would be right in the middle of realism and classical. Okay. So there's my suggestion of classical movies. By the way, I will definitely attach my list of movies for you to watch to the stream too, for you to check out. But now we're going to jump into formalism. Because we got about 20 minutes left in the stream, so that gives me enough time to go over this article, watch this 3-minute video, and then give you some of my 2 cents on it before we go. I do need to take a quick break because I'm freezing my fucking balls off right now. I don't know why it's so cold in this house, but we're going to hit this screen, enjoy this screen, and give me a second to turn the heat up. Okay, well, I uncovered the mystery of why it's so fucking cold in my house. Goddamn cold air. It's fucking 68 degrees in this bitch. I'm fucking freezing my little giblets off. And I'm checking my latency. Yep. Latency is all fucked up. Now it's fucked up. I don't know when it got fucked up, but I don't know how many clicks or pops we've gotten in the stream neither. I haven't been paying attention. But look at this. Look at this nasty latency. Look at that disgusting, despicable latency. It's this fucking NVIDIA thing still. Is the one that's doing NVIDIA and the Bergerberg or whatever that fucking thing is. What a bummer. What a boomer. Okay, well, is what it is. I'll have to figure that shit out later. Okay, so anyways, going back to formalism. All right, so what is formalism in film and TV? We're back to no film school. So, in the world of cinema and television, storytelling takes on many different forms, each with its unique approach and artistic intention. Oh, got a text. Need to get it off my phone before it does a little pingy thing again. All right. In the world of cinema and television, storytelling takes on many different forms, each with its unique approach and artistic intention. One of the most unique is formalism. The style pushes the boundaries of the conventional narrative and embraces the visual and artistic aspects of storytelling. Notice how they have a picture from 2001: Space Odyssey. There's a reason I put Stanley Kubrick closer to formalism. Formalism in film and TV challenges viewers to look beyond the surface and engage with the medium on a deeper, more introspective level. Today, we'll delve into the intricacies of formalism, exploring its origins, defining characteristics, and its impact on the way we experience visual storytelling. Formalism definition. Oh, Blue Velvet is in there, huh? That's a real creepy fucking movie. Formalism in film and TV refers to an artistic approach that emphasizes the aesthetic and technical elements of the medium, often prioritizing visual style, composition, and sensory experiences over conventional narrative structures. Formalist works focus on the manipulation of cinematography, editing, lighting, and sound design to create a distinct and immersive visual language. It is the opposite of realism. So, why use formalism? The formalism approach encourages audiences to engage with the medium on a deeper level, interpreting and deriving meaning from the visual and symbolic aspects of storytelling. Unlike more traditional narrative-driven filmmaking, formalism often embraces ambiguity, subjectivity, and metaphorical imagery. It might even employ nonlinear narratives, fragmented storytelling, and unconventional plot structures to evoke emotions and provoke thought. See, it's that sentence right there that made me put Quentin Tarantino closer to formalism, right? Nonlinear narratives, fragmented storytelling, unconventional plot structures. That is all Tarantino, baby. It's all about challenging the audience to see outside the everyday. Formalist filmmakers aim to transcend the boundaries of realism, using their creative choices to convey abstract concepts, emotions, and thematic messages through the interplay of visual elements. Origins and history. Formalism in cinema has its roots in the avant-garde movements of the early 20th century, such as German Expressionism and Soviet montage. These movements sought to break away from the constraints of realism and embrace a more abstract and experimental approach to filmmaking. Filmmakers like Fritz Lang and Sergei Eisenstein were pioneers of formalist techniques, using visual metaphors and innovative editing to convey emotional and psychological themes. The influence of formalism in film and TV. Formalism has left an indelible mark on the filmmaking landscape, influencing directors from various genres and eras. Many use the formalist elements even if their films aren't totally lumped in that way, right? That's an important note to make. A lot of films with formalist aspects that could be like, well, it is like a common narrative structure, so you could put it in classical, but it has that formalist element to it, right? Filmmakers, like Stanley Kubrick, David Lynch, Darren Aronofsky, are known for their distinctive formalist approaches, utilizing intricate visual design and unconventional storytelling techniques to captivate audiences. The characteristics of formalism in film and TV. So, formalism is an artistic philosophy that emphasizes the aesthetic and technical elements of a medium, often at the expense of traditional narrative structures. That's a still from Black Mirror. Cool. That's a good show. In the realm of film and television, formalism seeks to elevate the visual and sensory aspects of storytelling. We kind of already went over that, yada, yada, yada. Here's their own little checklist here. Visual aesthetics. These films often prioritize visual components and aesthetics, utilizing techniques like framing, color palette, and visual symbolism to convey meaning. These films invite audiences to interpret and engage with the visual elements on a symbolic level. 2. Emotional impact. Formalism aims to evoke emotional responses through sensory experiences. By manipulating elements like lighting, camera movement, and sound design, filmmakers can elicit specific feelings from the audience. Subjectivity and ambiguity. This kind of storytelling often embraces ambiguity and subjectivity, allowing viewers to interpret the narrative in various ways. This encourages active engagement and intellectual exploration of the film's themes. Non-linear narrative. Traditional linear storytelling takes a backseat in formalist works, where non-linear narratives or fragmented storytelling may be employed to create a more impressionistic and dreamlike experience. Metaphorical imagery. Formalism often employs metaphorical imagery and allegory to convey abstract concepts and emotions. This invites audiences to think critically about the underlying message within the narratives. Critiques of formalism. While formalism offers a fresh perspective on storytelling, it's not without its critics. Some argue that the emphasis on style can sometimes overshadow the substance, leading to narratives that are intellectually intriguing but emotionally distant. They also say the more abstract elements can muddy the theme and take people out of the empathetic and realistic engagement with the material. Additionally, the avant-garde nature of formalist works can limit their mainstream appeal, potentially alienating viewers. Okay, here's the juicy stuff I wanted. There are examples of formalism in TV. First up, 2001: A Space Odyssey. I think everybody kind of expected that. They had a fucking picture of it at the beginning of the article, right? Mulholland Drive. Good old David Lynch. Neo-noir film exemplifies formalism through its dreamlike, non-linear narrative and surreal imagery. Lynch uses disorienting editing and symbolic motifs to create a psychological and emotional impact, inviting viewers to interpret the story on multiple levels. Requiem for a Dream by Darren Aronofsky. The film employs a dynamic visual techniques, including rapid editing, extreme close-ups, and intense sound design, to convey the emotional turmoil of its characters. These stylistic choices immerse the audience in the characters' experiences and add to the overall intensity of the narrative. Yeah, that movie is fucking intense, dude. Like, if you want to convince your child to never take drugs ever, show them that movie, right? The Grand Budapest Hotel by Wes Anderson is a comedy that showcases formalism through its meticulous production design, symmetric framing, and vibrant color palette. Anderson's signature visual style becomes an integral part of the storytelling, contributing to the film's whimsical and quirky tone. Remember Wes Anderson, what they said about him on that realism video, where his movies have steadily gotten more and more closer to formalism. Twin Peaks, another David Lynch one. A TV series blends mystery, drama, and surrealism. The show's unconventional narrative structure, combined with dream sequences and symbolic imagery, exemplifies formalism on the small screen. Legion. I don't know that one. Takes approach a TV series. Okay, this show uses innovative visual effects, unreliable narration, and mind-bending visuals to explore the psychological struggles of its protagonist, blurring the lines between reality and perception. And Mr. Robot. Don't know that one neither. Another TV series uses formalist techniques to immerse the viewer in the world of hacking and psychological turmoil. Unconventional camera angles, fourth wall breaks, and distinctive visual choices reflect the protagonist's disorientated mindset. And then, of course, Black Mirror, another really good television series. So there's their list of formalist, some good formalist examples. I'll link that in the description. Let's watch this video by Phil O'Notes. Decent sized channel. I've never heard of them, but this was one of the few videos I could find on formalism. There's just not a lot. So let's see what they have to say about formalism and TV and film. Let me pop you over to this screen right now.
What is formalism? Formalism is a philosophical doctrine which espouses the idea of strictly adhering to prescribed structural forms of a particular text. In fact, the central argument in formalism revolves around the idea that the form of a work of literature is inherently a part of its content, and that the attempt to separate the two is fallacious.
We might have fucked up, or I might have fucked up, and you're just here to witness my fuck up. this looks like this is a video on formalism in literature. But let's just go ahead and see what they have to say.
As we can see, this doctrine is most commonly employed in the literary criticism, where focus is more, in fact, almost exclusively, on the structural form of the literary text. Hence, in formalism, what is considered is the text alone, without taking into account the context or any outside factors, such as biographical.
Yeah, this is definitely not what we want. So, yeah, when you dive into film theory, you'll realize there are so many different types of formalism. There's like formalism this, formalism that. Okay, see, here we got another video over here that says, what is formalism? A quick guide to literary criticism. Yeah, see, what a bummer. Fucking, yeah, see, it is very difficult to find YouTube videos on formalism film type. Let's just see if I can randomly pop one up. I highly doubt it, though. Formalism. Oh, this is by BP Real Insights. Okay, well, I guess I fucked that one up. I probably should have just popped theirs up there. 4 different types of formal film analysis. We don't want that. Visual poetry. There's formalism and realism. Formalist film theory is at Marcin Plaza. Okay, let's check out this video right here. Because we know BPP or BBP, we watched their video earlier.
What makes a post-university person? Post people don't have time to waste. They want to move their career forward. Post people don't have money to waste. They want a good education at a great value. Are you a post person? Find out at post.edu.
What is formalism film theory? Formalism film theory is the study of technical filmmaking elements, including lighting, sound, set, props, and costume design. The theory believes directors present an altered reality using filmmaking techniques. Professional actors, special effects, and editing manipulate the timing of on-screen events. Formalism creates a hybrid, altered illusion of a world using film elements. This film style communicates ideas, emotions, and themes. Production, special effects, editing, and various techniques facilitate ideological criticism and create tension and elevate the mood. The theory has no defined characteristics, it's more about altered use. Techniques include altered lighting, sound exaggeration, and professional acting. It also involves the use of props and special effects. These techniques break the illusion of a real event or element. Formalism film theory closely aligns with animation. Animations create a synthesized, unreal, and completely artificial world. Certain camera shots like POV, over the shoulder, and long shot connect with formalism. These shots create the perceived image or view of a break from reality. So, what is formalism film theory? Formalism film theory frequently uses combination of shots. Equipment, techniques, and filmmaking elements create various moods and intentions. Trust Beverly Boy Productions for more great industry-related content. Visit our website today. What is formalism film theory?
All right, so that explains, kind of tells us what we already know. I did see a movie, or a little video down here. An example. Let's see. Thomas Quill, what do you have to say?
Can you state your name for the record?
No, fuck off. You can read it yourself.
Are you getting smart with me, Steve?
Given the fact it took so long for you to find me, I think I'm pretty smart. I'm probably gonna get slapped right now, but that's the least of my worries.
Did you pack the bags yourself?
I packed a lot of bags and went onto that plane.
God damn it. My wife was on that plane.
Good.
That was weird. I don't know what we just left into there.
Hollywood movies?
It happens. You were here to do it with me, so We both had to go through it. Example of formalism in film. All right. Let's see. Formalist film theory. 4 minutes. Marcin Plaza, help us out here. What do you have to say?
The formalist film theory is an approach that is focused on the main technical elements. For example, shot composition, lighting, editing, sound, and set design are all considered in the formalist theory. Though the strict origins aren't known, formalism in film actually stems from art critics and the analysis, as many paintings share the techniques used in film. Some key theorists include Sergei Eisenstein and Rudolf Arnheim, who initially began to pay attention to formalist methods. And formalism can be generally split into topics like German Expressionism or tied to direct artists like Hitchcock.
This guy, one needs to improve some of the focus on his shots, on some of the shit he's using here, but definitely needs to up his volume. I know how that is. The audio struggle is real, son. Or at least give us closed captioning, unavailable. Bullet Train is a good one. That was a good movie.
I love you too.
She does have your eyes.
I know. I know.
Just before this sequence, James Bond climbs out of the darkness into the high-key lighting, revealing a transition of a sort of purity and inner understanding.
I can't even hear what this guy is saying.
The sunset marking the end of a chapter. The filmmakers build suspense by cutting to their characters taking care of his loved ones, and reacting to the audible sound of his impending demise. The music and POV shot framing put the viewer into James Bond's position, creating emotion, a feeling of loss, and a connection as the missiles strike the very beautiful scenery, corrupted by man.
Okay. Well, we get the gist of it. I wish this guy, Marcin Plaza, smaller channel. You know, you want to give the small guys a chance. I'm a pretty small channel myself. I think I'm smaller than that guy is at the moment, you know, so can't complain about that. Oh, there we go. Formalist Film Analysis by Chase Andrew. Was that the guy that? No, that was Thomas Quill. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Formalism in film. Yeah, some of these are just too short. Some of them are too long. But we get the general gist of it, right? You kind of understand what formalism in film is. I wish that first channel that we showed had a couple videos on this stuff. Here we go. Patrick 8 Willems. Because his video was spot on. That shit was dope. He really liked that Speed Racer movie, didn't he? I need to watch that. Honestly, that his whole little thing there just made me all kinds of excited to go watch that movie. He's got a lot of good shit, though. I got to start using more of his videos, man, because he's got some good stuff. But yeah, I couldn't find a formalism video on his channel, so we didn't get to throw down with his awesome take on it. He had a good take on realism, but as far as formalism goes, it was a no-ski. But that's okay. We got a general gist of what it is. We got our handy-dandy... there we go. Handy-dandy bullet points here, too, that help out with it. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of those examples that I had for you guys. So, like, The Patriot. Okay, this was one of those where I was like, well, it could fit into classicalism or formalism, right? It really could. Like, if you look at formalism, it has professional actors. So does classicalism, though. Relies heavily on special effects. Oh, you know what? this is the fuckers that see. Okay, I'm blaming this again on no film school. Okay, just like the Steven Spielberg video, the video that they linked in the description, Philo notes, was not the correct formalism. So fuck these guys. Okay, this is their fault that I fucked up on Scream. Okay, I'm totally shifting the blame to them. Anyways, professional actors, obviously Mel Gibson is in The Patriot. If any of you guys haven't seen that, that is a damn good movie, man. That was a classic from back in the day. Mel Gibson and his funny hat, killing motherfuckers. Relies heavily on special effects. A lot of special effects in The Patriot. A lot of bombs and shit going off. A lot of people getting killed. You know, heavy war scenes. I don't know if it's heavy special effects, but definitely has, I think it's more than just minimal. Yeah. There is slow motion used multiple times in that movie. So when it says used to slow down time, the editing is definitely, there's moments of very fast-paced editing as well in the middle of like war scenes. Lighting and sound definitely used to create exaggerations, especially during the war scenes again. And it isn't meant to break the illusion of reality, though, right? It is telling a story in a classical narrative, just like classical movies do. And I do believe it has some on-location shooting in it too. So it's classical, but it's really heavily leans toward formalism. American Sniper and Inglourious Bastards, I would put in closer to formalism than classicalism. Again, professional actors, relies heavily on special effects. Let's see, editing speeds. There's definitely speed ups and slowdowns in both movies. Lighting and sound used to create lots of exaggeration. And then breaks the illusion of reality. When we get into Inglourious Bastards, they're using heavily what is the word? Non-linear narratives are used quite often in Inglourious Bastards. I mean, all of Quentin Tarantino's movies have non-linear storytelling in them. Inglourious Bastards is definitely one of them. It hops all around that. Nasty burp. Hops all over that story. Ooh, goddamn. Heartburn. That burp was so nasty it burnt my heart. Okay, hold on. Need to chew me some Tums over here. Ooh. Criminy, that was rough, man. I was gonna die there. Okay. A better, even more obvious example of formalism for a war movie would be 300, right? Anything Zack Snyder makes is more than likely going to be on the formalism side. That dude leans heavily into formalism. If we look at Zack Snyder's filmography, just go over some of the stuff he's made, director-wise, most especially when we get to Sucker Punch, Watchmen, 300, and where was he? There's a couple others in there, I thought. Rebel Moon, there's a whole bunch of them that, yeah, this dude heavily relies on formalism, heavily relies on special effects, professional actors, lots of speeding up and slowing down. In the war scenes, the battle scenes, to 300, there's speed ups followed by slowdown, slow motion followed by really fast paced camera work and editing. And I mean, the actual film itself is even sped up at times, right? Lighting and sound, heavily exaggerated, meant to totally warp reality. So 300 definitely goes in there. I would even put Tombstone a little bit in the wanted to put Tombstone closer to formalism than realism. Again, professional actors, not a huge reliance on special effects, but professional actors, lighting and sound are heavily exaggerated. I don't think they use natural lighting in that at all. I don't think they're shooting on set or on location. It's all on set. Editing, they use speed ups and slowdowns for time, right? One of the speed ups for time that they use is like montages, multiple montages in that movie. Doesn't mean to break the illusion of reality, but it kind of does. You know, the reality is the story of Tombstone, at least Wyatt Earp story is heavily, I mean, it's unrealistic. That movie takes a lot of creative liberty with the actual story. Again, you got Quentin Tarantino in there with The Hateful Eight, right? Heavy use of lighting and sound design. Very, what's the word I'm looking for? Non-narrative, again, non-linear narrative, special effects, professional actors, the whole 9 yards, right? Again, Django Unchained, same thing. Think of like the gunshots in Django Unchained, right? In that movie, Django Unchained, good fucking movie. If you guys haven't seen Hateful Eight or Django Unchained, two of my favorite Western movies from Quentin Tarantino. Both of them are great movies. The gunshots in this movie, when he shoots somebody, blood just like explodes, right? The squibs are just huge and the blood is really liquidy. So it's just like a wave of blood flies out of them when they get shot. An even better example of a Western that is very heavy on the formalism is Wild Wild West. Remember Wild Wild West? Anybody? People like hate this movie, and I really like this movie. It's like a guilty pleasure of mine. Wild Wild West with Will Smith. Wild Wild West. I remember that song too. This came out when I was a kid. If we go back, professional actors, heavy special effects. I mean, this is like an odd mixture. The movie is an odd mixture of Wild West and steampunk. They have a big giant mechanical spider. And I mean giant. It like steps on a train and burns down like homes with this giant flamethrower and shit. So heavy use of special effects. There's slow motion in it. Montages to speed up time. Lighting and sound. Heavy exaggerations. Heavy use of lighting effects and sound effects. Definitely used to warp the idea of reality. Right? The Revenant was one that you wouldn't think would go into formalism, but for me, I would say it's classical. That kind of relies heavily on formalism. Think about the special effects. That bear scene where the bear is taking down Leonardo DiCaprio, as realistic as it looks, that bear is all special effects, man, almost entirely. I think they did use a real bear for some shots, but very heavily special effects, right? Very special effects orientated, professional actors. There's a lot of scenes there, particularly when Leonardo DiCaprio is almost dying and he's really out of it. They use a lot of funky editing to manipulate his dream sequences. Slow motion, speeding up of time. Again, lots of lighting and sound exaggerations. And yeah, it does tell a classical story in a linear format. But I don't know how much of it was shot on location. I would imagine a lot of it was shot in studio. Again, if you think of like the crazy editing, think of the battle scene at the beginning of the movie between the Cree Native Americans and the trappers, the fur trappers. Yeah, tons of editing in that to make the scene even more crazy, right? John Wick is a really good action one that relies on heavy realism. Think of all the crazy lighting they use in that movie, all of the neon lighting that they use, the speeding up and slowing down, lots of really fast-paced editing in certain scenes, heavy use of special effects. Definitely breaks the illusion of reality. I mean, John Wick himself, that's kind of the point of John Wick. He's such a badass assassin that he really does break what is realistic, right? Inception. This is why I think I put Christopher Nolan on the formalism side on my list. Is movies like Inception, Tenet, and Interstellar are movies that definitely, again, as far as formalism goes, right? If we look at the bullet list, professional actors, heavy use of special effects in all those movies, heavy use of editing in all those movies for speeding up and slowing down, heavy use of lighting and sound design in all those movies, meant to break the illusion of reality. All three of those movies, Tenet, Inception, and Interstellar, all of them are meant to warp your perception of reality. Think of Interstellar in the black hole, right? Think of Inception and going through all the different dream sequences, all the different scenes in there, right? It's totally warping your sense of what's real. Let's see. Scarface was one that I put, interestingly enough, on the formalist side, closer to formalism than classical, even though it's used to tell a classic narrative. The use of montages, it's infamous for its use of montages. slow motion, particularly in the last shootout, relies heavily on special effects for a lot of the gunfight scenes. Professional actors, lighting and sound, maybe not so much heavy on that. Same with on set and on location. I don't know how much of it is on location or on set. Natural Born Killers is a great movie. I liked it. Quentin Tarantino wrote it. Oliver Stone shot it. Quentin Tarantino hates the way Oliver Stone shot it. But I was a huge fan of this movie. This movie uses cartoons, same like Kill Bill. Kill Bill breaks halfway through the first movie to use anime to continue telling parts of the story. Natural Born Killers does the same thing, includes cartoon sequences in it. Tons of crazy editing, non-linear storytelling, slowing down, speeding up, montages, the lighting in some parts of both movies, both Natural Born Killers and Kill Bill. I don't know what happened there, get away. They have black and white scenes mixed with color scenes. They swap in between black and white and full color. And it's really funny because Natural Born Killers came out way before Kill Bill and used a lot of the directing and editing techniques from Natural Born Killers, even though Quentin Tarantino claims to hate that. I put a lot of Snatch, Rock'n'Rolla, Sherlock Holmes, all Guy Ritchie movies, which is why I put Guy Ritchie closer to formalism. If you look at those three movies, professional actors in all of them, I would say it's minimal special effects, right? Not heavily relies on special effects, but there is special effects in those movies for sure. But the editing, lighting, and sound are all really, really kind of crazy out there, right? The editing most especially in those movies. And they are non-linear storytelling, right? But think of like the editing in Sherlock Holmes when Sherlock Holmes is thinking and it's slowing down and speeding up. Crazy editing right there, right? Gangs in New York. There's a Gangs in New York and Wolf of Wall Street were two Martin Scorsese movies that I put on the list of formalism. Professional actors, heavy use of special effects in the wars, the fighting from Gangs in New York. Wolf of Wall Street doesn't have a lot of special effects, but think of the editing in Wolf of the Wall Street. That was all over the place. So was lighting and sound, right? Definitely breaks the illusion of reality to some extent. If you think of the story, both of those stories were lots of artistic license with both of those movies, right? And then want to kind of point out Man on Fire, Domino, two Tony Scott movies that I thought were closer to formalism than classical. Even Guy Ritchie's movies and Tony Scott's movies, I'd say they're in between classical and formalism. But Tony Scott, professional actors, if you think of like Man on Fire, heavy use of special effects for bombs, grenades, rapid gunfire. The editing and lighting is really and sound design is really where you get a lot from Domino and Man on Fire. Heavy use of all of those things. And now, if you look at Pacific Rim, you get into virtually anything that I think Guillermo del Toro makes. Not anything, but a lot of what Guillermo del Toro has done. I put him in mostly formalism. If you think of Pacific Rim or Pan's Labyrinth, not using a lot of professional actors in a lot of his Spanish movies like Pan's Labyrinth or The Orphanage or The Devil's Backbone, but relies very heavily on special effects. Lots of interesting editing happening there. It's not like Tony Scott or Guy Ritchie level of crazy editing. Lots of lighting and sound design. Most of it is on set very clearly, not on location. And it's meant to break the illusion of reality in all circumstances. If you think Pacific Rim, robots battling monsters, it's meant to break reality. Right? Same with Pan's Labyrinth, right? In a lot of sequences, we can't tell if this is reality or not, Then we got Interstellar in there again. Matrix, closer formalism, right? Think of all the crazy editing and the crazy effects for that time. Under the Skin is a good sci-fi horror one. If you guys haven't checked that one out, it's a good one. I thought that was a picture of Under the Skin. Under the Skin. Good Scarlett Johansson one. Definitely a really good example of formalism in a movie. Very abstract. I'd say out of all the movies I put on the formalist list, this one so far is the most formalist out of all of them. Very, very abstract. heavy use of lighting, sound design, editing, really crazy camera angles, abstract storytelling, and it's very much up to interpretation. A lot of the movie is really freaky deaky, good sci-fi horror one, right? The Substance recently, I would put more in formalist. Okay, and from some, I would say, some newer horror movies that came out that I think are a good representation of formalism. The Substance and Talk to Me and Evil Dead Rise at least are closer to formalist than classical. You don't use professional actors in Talk to Me, but you do in the other two. Heavily relies on special effects in all three cases. Lots of editing being done, more especially in The Substance. You got some crazy editing, lighting, and sound happening there. Evil Dead Rise, maybe not so much. It's just got a very heavy use on special effects. But they're meant to break, all three of them are meant to break the illusion of reality. Quiet Place, another one I'd put close, classical, but closer to formalism than realism, And then for some older ones, Hellraiser, and then The Exorcist and Silent Hill, I think would be closer to formalism. Exorcist, I think you could put closer to classical than formalist, but Silent Hill and Hellraiser are two really good examples of formalism for horror movies. So there's my list of all of some good formalist movies to check out to get a good grasp on what formalism is. And that about covers it for my film type. Here, I'm going to switch over to the other screen. My face being that big makes me uncomfortable right now. Okay, so that covers it for my film type deep dive. Okay, so yeah, I think you should by this point have a really good understanding of what the three different types of film are as far as film theory is concerned: formalism, realism, and classical. This at least gives you a really good understanding to be able to go out and practice with any of this film theory stuff. If you're like me, you are attempting to get better at analyzing movies. Then, the next step from this, the first step is to try to figure out what you don't know. Then the second step is to learn what you don't know. And then the third step is to practice it and burn it into your brain. So from this point on, it's just taking all the information you learned in this stream and going out, watching movies, and applying what you learn to the movies that you watch. And burning it into your brain what the differences between these three film types are, so it's easy for you to spot, right? And that's where we go from here. But you should be able to do that after this stream. So that does it for today. That's my Film Buff Friday. I didn't pull my stream up to see if there was anybody watching or not. If there was and still is, thank you. I appreciate you tuning into the stream to check me out and hang out. Always enjoy our talks. And I'm stopping my latency thing right now. It's just too ugly to look at. Kills me. I appreciate you coming in and watching this film. Fridays or watching this watching this stream. Fuck balls. Fridays are always really fun for me, so I always have a blast doing the Friday streams. So it's always nice when people tune in too. If you're watching this on YouTube and you enjoyed the content and found it informational, please give it a like and subscribe. That definitely helps with the algorithm, kind of helps me build up a following. And if you would like to, come check out my live stream on Twitch every Friday at 7 p.m. We go over all kinds of film theory type stuff. These are always enjoyable for me to talk about film regardless if there's anybody there, but it's more enjoyable to talk with other people. So I would definitely enjoy having you in the stream to chat with me while we're learning. That would be a blast. If you're interested in checking out more film related stuff, you can check out my past YouTube videos. I have a few of them out. I already kind of went over those. Next Friday, I'm going to be going over deep dive into shots. All right. And then I don't stream on the weekends. This is a Friday today, as I've said multiple times. I'll be streaming next Monday. I'm going to be going over EMDR therapy. That's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. That's actually what this little thing behind me is. This little line right there is an EMDR bar. And we're going to be going over how you use one, or how a therapist would use one, what EMDR therapy is, what it does, how you work. That'll be our Mental Health Mondays, right? So tune in for that if you're interested in mental health topics. But in the meantime, to anybody who's watching or does watch this, I hope you have an amazing weekend, had an amazing weekend if this video's in the past. And thank you for showing up. I really appreciate your support. You guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I will see you Monday. Peace.